Welcome back to the Sunday Blitz, the day after Ohio State blitzed Western Kentucky 63-10. That is Zach Boren. I am Austin Ward. And, buddy, I think that's what the Buckeyes are supposed to look like.
That's what they needed. They
Okay.
for sure are supposed to look like that. But I think mentally that's what they needed going into this week's game.
So maybe we made too much out of this for the first couple games. Like whether I'm right or wrong about the preseason approach and Ryan Day saying the slow build doesn't matter. They were trying to get ready to play their best football at Notre Dame next Saturday. And maybe if they had, turned in another ho-hum victory and unleashed everything next weekend, they still could have done that and been fine. But what's the value from where you sit in like a complete performance like this and the confidence boost, as opposed to just like saying, oh, we still have a trick left up our sleeve? It has to be significant that Ohio State has put something like that together on film, on the field, and all of that.
Well, it just feels good. You're going to feel it in the locker room. They're feeling it at the facility. Today when they show up from that standpoint, the biggest thing to me, and I know all of Buckeye Nation who listens to this podcast and is going to be like, no, you're full of it. Knowing that you go into a game that you're not getting pulled, you don't know what series you're going to play. If you go into the game saying, hey, listen, I am playing first string, I'm out there. If the offense has the ball, if the defense has the ball, I'm running out there to go on the field until we are so far ahead that they're pulling us out and they're putting the second string in. There's something mentally just almost welcoming about it, right? You can almost then get into the flow of the game. We talk about it all the time on this podcast. Talk to any football player. Doesn't matter the level of play, high school, college, NFL. If they are rotating and they're starting quarterback and they roll out and not knowing if, hey, offense has a ball, if I'm running out or the other guy's running out, there's mentally you just get messed up. And so as an entire offense, as a cohesive unit, I think we saw, hey, Kyle's our guy. We know that there's you kind of come together out on the field. You get to know one another from that standpoint. Obviously, they know each other, but it's just that comfortability that, hey, man, this is our guy. We're going out there as a unit. And I think you saw it again on the defensive side. There was less rotating on the defense side. Granted, I think the defense had some questions from this past Saturday if there's anything we can nitpick on. Mm-hmm. But this was the first time this year that you saw this team run out with the dudes. The dudes are the guys that are playing every snap. This is it. And you saw what they can do.
Why do you think, Zach? So Ryan Day, Kyle McCord, Emeka Ibuka, they're talking after the game on Saturday night. It's like, well, the change came a week ago last Sunday. We're recording the Sunday Blitz, and they're getting back into the Woody, watching film and saying, well, get back on the practice field. It's time to turn up the intensity. You could have waited till this week, right? I mean, could have potentially flipped the switch and just said, well, now it's Notre Dame. Now it's real. It makes sense, right, that you wanted to have a performance to build on against Western Kentucky beforehand. But what is it you think about the first 2 weeks that changed last Sunday and then a great week of preparation to put something like that together against Western Kentucky?
Well, I think you had to do it this week because you couldn't go into Notre Dame saying, hey, we're going to flip this on. I think what you saw yesterday was finally, hey, we're going to dial up some blitzes on defense that will actually be running against Notre Dame, and it's not just first day install stuff. You saw the offense open it up, doing different things, whether it be the end around handoff to Marv, whether it be taking shots down the field, different route patterns that they saw. We finally saw kind of the crossing of receivers that Emeka scored on in the second quarter. Just different things that you're accustomed to seeing with an Ohio State football team is what you saw this week. And you had to do that because you had to feel it out. There's a difference between practice and feeling it, seeing it, doing it, and executing in a game. And so they were finally able to do that. Now it's like, hey, listen, now we're going to add a couple wrinkles. We did what we opened up the playbook. Now let's add wrinkles off of it going into the biggest game of the season so far.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting just to hear those guys say, like, okay, even if it was a slow build, as players, you still have one-on-one matchups. And we came out of the Youngstown State game, you're like, well, they should have won more of those. And that's true. it's like it's a delicate balance to me, and I thought it was hard to evaluate that. If it's like, okay, you're not necessarily trying to be 100% full go in those first 2 weeks, but you could have still executed and played better. So for them to say, well, there did have to be some sort of change. The practices had to be different. The film study, the scheme and all that stuff had to change. And I like, because it is still Ohio State. Like, that's the thing. You've got that block O on your chest. You've been a captain, and you know what the standard is like in there. And for them to actually say, yes, the first 2 weeks did not meet the standard, I thought was encouraging. Now, that's also easier for them to say when they're, talking in the post game last night, hey, we finally did it this week. And when the score is 63-10, like, that matches up. But it is more about Sunday through Thursday and best Fridays in football sometimes for Ohio State than like just rolling out and expecting it to happen on Saturday.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, and you and I talked about this many of times on on this podcast. We discuss it off of it. Everyone knew that Ohio State the first 2 weeks were almost treating it as preseason football games, right? They were going very vanilla, very basic. There were some key positions that you had first-time starters at. So it's like, let's get our feet on the ground and then be able to build off of it. And you saw that. You finally saw them open things up like we've just discussed. The bigger thing to me, and that's what we've talked about on this podcast, was you're right. There were some one-on-one matchups where it's like, that's not a basic first day thing from a play calling standpoint. That's, hey, dude on dude, who's going to win? And I think that's what bothered some people. Not so much. I know there's people on Twitter that were saying, the play calling was absolutely terrible. There's nothing to it. Where's the Georgia Ryan Day? You and I never criticized that. And I don't think we should have, because you needed to get the basics down. You needed to build a foundation in order to, hey, put this game together that we saw yesterday and then go into Notre Dame with some other massive games coming up after the bye week. And so the bigger thing to me are some of those one-on-one matchups where it's not basic play call. It's, hey, listen, it's a pass play. What kind of pass rusher we can get? It's a run play. What's our, run gap scheme look like from defensive linemen winning their one-on-one battles or splitting double teams and making plays, right? Like, those are the bigger things. And I think that's why everyone's been so positive with the DBs, because they're winning the one-on-one matchups. Yeah. They're calling a basic defense on the back end. Very basic. We haven't given them any kind of different zone looks. It's either, the simple zones that we call, or man coverage, cover 0, cover 1, whatever, right? We've thrown in some 2-man, whatever it is. But you see those guys winning the one-on-one battles, and it's like jumping off thinking the DBs are doing something completely different. That's not it. At the end of the day, hey, listen, they're playing those dudes, they're making the plays, and they're, getting the defense off the field when they need to.
Denzel Burke is still living up to that. The way he's talking is backed up on Saturdays, man. What he said after Youngstown State, they need to go mug those dudes. He is doing that. Denzel Burke really is playing at a high level. I would say that's the thing that, like, I was going to ask you what you liked most about Saturday in the win over Western Kentucky. I think the way Denzel Burke, Jordan Hancock, the way that they've continued to build momentum, and maybe that's not even the right way to say it, because Denzel Burke has played well in all 3 games. He's just doing it consistently. I would say that the secondary answered the challenge of that pass attack for me, and that's probably where I would start for things that I liked most on Saturday. What about you?
That was a potent offense, a really potent offense. I think people are like, it's a non-Power 5 team. It's, just Western Kentucky. That Western Kentucky team's the same team that went down to USF week 1 and hung 45, 47, whatever it was, on a USF team that you saw Alabama play yesterday, right? And had some struggles with. So I was thrilled with the way the DBs are playing, especially getting that kind of test going into this week. Sam Hartman can sling it, man. He can really sling it. And so it's, what are those one-on-one matchups going to look like with the DBs this week? And I hate to say it, I know Buckeye Nation, has nightmares about last year's Michigan game and last year's Georgia game where DBs lost some of those one-on-one battles. But those guys are going to be in that position this week, because Ohio State's going to have to put some pressure on Sam Hartman and that offense. And right now, they're not able to do it with the guy with the front 4 And so they're going to have to bring some blitzes, some pressure from the second level, which is going to, you know, put those guys on some islands on the back end. But the way that they're playing right now, I mean, you couldn't be happier with those guys. Jordan Hancock, OBG, Denzel, like all those guys are playing so good.
So that was something you liked, transitioned right into something to nitpick. Like the pass rush did seem to start getting home a little bit more once Ohio State built the lead, right? Like it's easier. The pass rush is going to come along. It's natural. You know that they have to do it. Western Kentucky was going to do that anyway. I think, you know, if we're nitpicking, it's like, can Ohio State come out and do that right off the jump? The way that they did as the game progressed, especially once you like Kenyatta Jackson getting in the game, Caden Curry, Mitchell Melton was in there late. It looked like he was, you know, fired out of a cannon. I mean, can that happen right from the first quarter? I think would still be my question coming out of Saturday. I think maybe you're in a similar boat as me, but I'm not going to put those words in your mouth.
That's my one question with the defense right now is that defensive line has to kind of show up, right? And I hate putting it that way. There are some talented dudes on that front four. But even some of even the run defense, you know, there were times where, in my opinion, if Tommy and Steele aren't as good as they are, Western Kentucky could have broken some of those runs. And so going into this week, that's my one question mark. If we're talking, you know, the defense side of the ball, is what can that front four do? Notre Dame has a great running attack, and they can back it up finally with a quarterback who can sling it. So you're not going to get into a situation where you did against Western Kentucky when you jump down, you know Western Kentucky is going to throw the football. I mean, that's their MO, throwing the football. And so against Notre Dame, you have to be able to defend the run. You got to be able to rush the passer when you need to. And it's not going to be given to you, you know, when you put your hand in the dirt saying, hey, listen, I'm chomping at the bit because I know they're passing here, right? You got to be able to react. You got to be able to play off blocks. You got to be able to do so many different things against a really good Notre Dame offense and a really good offensive line. And so that's where I'm probably worried the most from a defense standpoint is what can those guys do this week compared to the first 3 weeks of the season.
What did you make of start number 3 in a row here for Kyle McCord?
I loved it. You know, 19 of 23, you can't get much better. You know, I think, what was it? 1 or 2 of those incompletions probably should have been completions because he was a little short on the ball. But other than that, 19 of 23, over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, just kind of it looked like he came into his own. And, you know, you don't see the trolls on social media this week from Twitter after the game of people complaining about the quarterback battle, right? And there's something to be said. We've already touched on it. Something to be said about just the mental well-being of a player going into a game, knowing like, hey, listen, I can cut things loose and I don't have to worry about making a mistake and getting pulled. I don't have to worry about going in on this drive and forcing the offense to get a touchdown because I'm worried that they're going to put another person in, right? You can kind of relax, get into the feel of the game and just sling it. And that's when players are at their best. You know, if they're tight at all, you're going to see guys fail. You're going to see, I hate to say it, kind of like the performance that you saw the first 2 weeks. Now you finally see a Kyle McCord who seemed settled in, who seemed like he was on the same page with those wide receivers. You could just kind of see the whole offense pick up their, I don't even know. It was weird, right? I mean, you and I were at the game. It just seemed like the offense was kind of floating out there instead of sitting on their heels like they have been the past 2 weeks. And that's such a good sign, especially going into Notre Dame.
It was a more juicy performance, really on both sides of the ball. But I think that, you know, if there had been, I don't know, criticism, like we know that there's going to be talk about the quarterbacks at Ohio State no matter what. And everybody seemed to be relatively on the same page. Yes, Kyle McCord's got a big arm. He was a 5-star. Ryan Day picked him. He's known the offense for several years. A lot of the questions that I would get, and I know that the same is true for you, is like, well, does Kyle McCord have that, have the cojones to lead this team? Does he going to bring the energy? Is he going to bring the juice? If he gets in the huddle, does he get the guys fired up? It was about his leadership that people wondered. And I thought I'd seen that dating back to spring. I thought it was a pretty energetic spring from him. I thought that was part of the reason that he was leading, aside from the experience. But Emeka Egbuka said something that was pretty interesting on Saturday night, which is, I mean, you had this battle, and we know that it got tighter in training camp than maybe we anticipated, and that's a credit to Devin Brown. But you've been in these locker rooms, and he said, well, I had questions about the leadership. He'd never done it before. You know, guys, actually say that out loud doesn't usually happen. I know that it's true, but the rate at which that actually occurs, that the wide receivers, that the rest of the offense starts responding to a guy, it doesn't happen on a definite timeline. But it seems to have happened by now for Ohio State. And I don't know if it's just as simple as saying, hey, Ryan Day says this is the starter, let's get in line. If it's something that Kyle McCord says or does that's different as he takes over, but it clicks. And Zach, you've been through this before. Like, guys in the locker room have to know and then believe. Somebody doesn't just get to hold up their hand and say, I'm the leader, and everybody follows in line. You do have to take control and act like it.
Yeah, just because you're named the starting quarterback or you are the starting quarterback doesn't appoint you the leader of the locker room, doesn't appoint you a great leader in general, right? In order to be a great leader, you have to be in the thick of it. You have to be, a lot of times we'll go back to legs. You got to be a dog, right? You got to be someone who is leading the troops at the front of the line and being able to say, hey, listen, either watch me, listen to me, and because whatever I'm preaching, whatever I'm doing, I'm right there with you and I'm setting the pace. And when you have a wide receiver core like you do, when you've got a running back room like you do, you can't just throw a quarterback in there who's never started and expect to be like, hey, guys, follow me. Hey, guys, listen to me. Like, the guy needs to be in battle. Right? You're not just going to have someone show up. And when you've got some experienced dudes that have been in the heat of the battle and they know what it's like, and they know what it's like, to get hit in the mouth and be like, man, my back's against the wall. How am I going to come out fighting? Like, you got to earn that. And I think finally we see Kyle McCord. I mean, you saw on the hype video that Ohio State released before this week's game, you saw Kyle McCord in the locker room, against Youngstown State, getting those guys amped up. Like, you see some of those things. And I think finally Saturday, like, you're right. You saw guys on the offense look towards Kyle, and that's a great sign, because now it's like, hey, I got you. I've seen what you can do. We've been in the heat of the battle now. This is our third game together. Like, I'm going to back you up. It's kind of one of those things when you got to show your worth, right? And I hate saying it like that, but in a locker room, when you've got guys from all over the country, 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever it might be, like, you got to show those guys, like, hey, I'm the real deal. I'm willing to stand in the pocket and I can do all the things that you do. I know you're a great football player, but watch this. I got you, and no one wants to, I'm being kind of blunt with this, but no one wants to play with someone that isn't performing or isn't up to the same par that I guess the past quarterbacks have been, right? Or the past players have been at that position. And so you got to show it. It's much different in spring ball or summer camp rather than, those Saturdays in the fall when the lights are on, the TVs are on, and you have 100,000 people in the fans. Like, there's something different about that. And so I think you're finally seeing this offense, and it goes back to the rotating. Those guys couldn't see it when they were rotating, right? When you've got Kyle in for 2 series and Devin in for 1, then, Kyle back in for 1 or whatever it might be, like, you don't have a front row seat to that. Like, you're not able to feel that guy in the huddle. You're not able to feel that guy on the field. And I finally think, like, it went back to what I said. It almost seemed like the offense was kind of floating, like they were on their toes instead of on their field, or instead of on their heels, because I think they felt Kyle's presence finally on the field.
Yeah. I want this is going to sound like tinfoil and conspiracy, but I wonder if that was what Ryan Day was hoping to get out of continuing the battle. Which, it did seem clear against both Indiana and Youngstown State that Kyle McCord was leading and going to emerge. But by not naming him and keeping that going and keeping the competition alive, like, Kyle McCord's toughest test was not Indiana and Youngstown State. It was emerging and staying ahead of Devin Brown. Correct. And if handling that the way he did and emerging the way he did, if Ryan Day was like, well, this is the point. if he can win this battle and prove it while also performing against Youngstown State, maybe the locker room unites and comes behind, and that propels Kyle McCord forward. I'll take the conspiracy hat off, but maybe that was what the design all along.
Yeah, well, I think to be blunt about it again, I think this was a difference. Ryan wanted Kyle to go into fall camp and say, I'm the freaking dude. Like, give me the ball. I'm running this offense. Let's go. Like, I want the ball in my hands. I want to sling this thing around. Like, I don't care who Devin Brown is, right? He's my teammate. He's in the quarterback room, but I'm not Devin Brown. I'm much better than Devin Brown, and I'm the guy to lead this offense. Instead, I think you saw Kyle McCord go into fall camp and say, I can't lose this competition to Devin Brown. Like, I'm supposed to be the guy winning this, so I can't lose it, right? Mm-hmm. And you saw the complete opposite of what Ryan was looking for, and I think that's why he extended the competition the way he did, because he's like, hey, you got to show me you're the dude, right? Like, you got to take the ball and say, I'm going to freaking win this thing, and I'm going to make some massive plays, and I'm going to launch the ball down the field to Marvin, to Mecca, to Julian, to all these guys, right? Instead of just saying, hey, I want to be the guy to be out on the field. Like, that's not how it is. He wants a quarterback that when you go out on the field, you're like, hey, I'm the best freaking quarterback in the country, and I'm going to lead this offense, and there's no one better than me. And that's the attitude that you have to have. And I think finally, you're seeing that switch turn on for Kyle, which makes him a dangerous quarterback. But that was the issue is Kyle was going into survival mode. And I talked about it at land grant before the first game. And, I knew a little bit about it. I just didn't kind of want to name drop before, seeing what it was. But Kyle was so conservative in camp. He's just like, man, I just don't want to mess this up. I'm the starter if I don't mess it, right? And then you had Devin, who was like, well, I gotta show that I'm the starter. And you saw Devin taking some chances, which I think is what made it so close. And so, yeah, I mean, it's cool to see Kyle kind of put all the BS aside and say, hey, listen, it was a competition, but I'm the dog, right? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be an Ohio State quarterback, and that's what you need, and that's what Ryan wants.
Yeah. Well said there, Zach. All right. Sunday Blitz winding down. 3 and out. 3 stars from the Western Kentucky game. Go.
Man, number 3, you got to go, and it's going to be a crazy one, right? You got to go with the linebacker core. They played so well, and they have played so well, and I'm not even just going to say Tommy or Steele, but man, those guys led a phenomenal attack this week, man. And I don't think people give them as much credit as they should. I mean, those dudes coming from a former linebacker guy that's played the position his entire life, those guys can freaking play, man. And we take for granted how good they are on the field. We take for granted the duo together, like how they play off one another. But Steele getting an interception, Tommy running around, making plays. Those guys saved the defensive line's butts multiple times yesterday, and those guys are going to have to step up big this coming up week. Number 2, I'm going to go with the group again, the DBs, man, because you have a high-flying Western Kentucky passing attack that was a great offense, and that offense will still be really good as the year goes on. And they put the clamps on those dudes, man. And, Jermaine Matthews, even though he's not a starter, pick 6. You saw Denzel Burke coming up and stuff in the run, getting a forced fumble. And that's just not the pass defense that they've had. Just the entire back end. Lathan Ransom played well. Even Josh Proctor played well. I think he had a couple MAs, but I haven't went back and watched the film. But still, him getting out there playing well, and we've already talked about Hancock and OGB and what they've brought and the way they're able to play. And then number 1's got to be Kyle McCord, right? 19 of 23. Finally, we just talked about it. Yep. All the noise that's been going on in this past summer training camp, the first 2 weeks, he came out, showed everyone like, hey, listen, I'm that dude, and I'm taking the next step. Just watch me. And 19 of 23, over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just kind of seemed like he was coming into his own, and we don't need to go down that rabbit hole again, because I think I think everyone knows, like, and everyone saw with their own eyes what he's capable of doing and what Ryan sees in him and why he's been put in the position that he has been.
Well, tune-up season is over, Zach. A lot of content coming on the podcast all week long to get ready for Ohio State's trip to Notre Dame. Fired up to bring that to you. Fired up that Zach will be part of several more episodes this week, or a couple more episodes now that this one's out of the way. But it feels good to be watching an Ohio State game and then propelling it forward to the next one instead of just trying to figure out everything that went wrong or could have been better. I like doing this better.
I do too. The past couple of weeks, there's been some questions, right? And I don't think it was schematically. I think it's like, hey, I thought these guys were, this player, that player. Like, where are they? They haven't shown up yet, right? Like, hey, listen, it's the season, man. It's game time. What we saw yesterday, that's exciting. Now, guess what? The lights are going to be on this Saturday, man. And these dudes, this is what you play college football for. This is why you come to Ohio State. This is what gets your juices flowing. So I'm so excited to see what these guys can do this week. And it's great that we're not sitting here breaking down questions from yesterday's game and now can put all of our focus towards Notre Dame, because God, I'm already juiced for this week. I've already been texting people. I cannot wait for Saturday, man. I wish it was tomorrow.
Huge week ahead. We're kicking it off right away on Sunday Blitz. As always, we appreciate the insight and analysis from Zach Boren. I am just Austin Ward. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. We will talk to you later.